What are some things that professional photographers do to put that finishing touch on their images? I'm giving away some secrets on today's episode of
Ask David Bergman.
Hey there everybody, welcome back. Here I am, as always, answering your photography questions right here on Adorama TV. If you've got a photo question, you know what to do. You just go to askdavidbergman.com and submit that form on the site. I just might pick your question and answer right here on a future show. Now today I'm breaking my format just a little bit because I don't have a specific question that was sent in about this topic, but it's something I think is super important and will help a lot of people to create better images. Now there are a couple of things that pro photographers do to make our images just feel a bit more polished. Now, of course, I can't speak for all photographers, and there actually are an infinite number of things you can do to improve your images. Just scroll through the videos right here on Adorama's YouTube channel to get an idea of some of those things. But I'm going to share two things that I feel get overlooked most often. They might seem inconsequential at first, but can actually make your images more impactful. The first one is to straighten your photos. More often than not, when I shoot a landscape photo, the horizon line just isn't parallel to the top and bottom of the frame. Even when I try really hard to keep it straight while I'm shooting, I think one of my legs must just be longer than the other one, and my photos always come out just leaning a little bit. Take a look at this shot I made a few months ago when I was in the Lofoten Islands in Norway. It was overcast, but the scene was really dramatic and made for a cool image. However, my horizon line isn't straight. There is some symmetry top and bottom with the reflection on the mountains and the lake, but the overall frame is just leaning to the left. It feels like it's falling over. Now I use Capture One for all of my post-processing, but of course you can do this in Photoshop, Lightroom, and probably just about any image processor. And there's a slider in the Capture One rotation and flip tool that makes it super easy to straighten out your images. It even brings up a grid so you can see the straight lines to help you line it up. Now I'm going to eyeball it and just slide back and forth until it looks just right, and that looks exactly where I want it. Now I do this with almost every image that I shoot. Here's a picture I made of my friend Jackie for a lighting video. She's jumping in front of a brick wall and you can see all of those horizontal and vertical lines. Now I was hand holding the camera, I was on a tripod, and my main concern during the shoot was keeping her in the frame and firing the strobe at the very top of her jump. The last thing I cared about at that moment was keeping the camera perfectly straight. So in post, I'm going to take a few extra seconds to just straighten it out. This is usually the first step in my camera processing when I start working on my images. For this particular photo, I'm going to use this button to draw a line across where I want it to be straight, and Capture One is going to automatically do it for me. And Photoshop has the same function in the crop tool. You can see that the bottom of the wall is now parallel to the bottom of the frame, and the bricks at the top are parallel to the top of the frame. So it's nice and straight all the way through. And like I said, it can be subtle, but it's just one of those things that makes an image look more polished. Here's the before, and here's the after. I see a big difference. Now, the second thing that's just as important as straightening is cropping. I know that there are some purists out there who always want to shoot their images exactly right and not do any cropping in post, but I am not one of those people. I think cropping will often improve a photo, especially if you're covering events like concerts and sports and fast action and you can't compose your image carefully in the moment when you're taking those pictures. Now here's another action shot of Jackie from that same volleyball shoot. I had her running and diving for the ball, and you can see we had some padding on the ground so she could go full out and land without getting hurt. It's so much more dramatic if you don't see the ground in the final photo. So when I get it into the computer, I'm going to crop up from the bottom to get rid of that. Now, side note here, for most horizontal images, me personally, I try to keep them in the original 3:2 ratio. That's the same ratio that full frame or crop sensor cameras shoot natively, so when I crop into my images, I lock it to the original ratio and usually keep it that way. Now, depending on how you're using your images, what your clients want, and your particular style, you might choose to crop differently. It's totally a personal preference. Not every image works that way, but I like that size and I'm used to shooting 3:2. So I'm going to start out that way whenever possible. Now, I'm going to get rid of the padding in this image, but I'm not going to crop all the way up to her hands. Leaving some dead space below Jackie makes it look like she's higher off the ground. If there's no space at the bottom, it just doesn't have that same drama. Now it's the opposite at the top. If I leave too much room up there, it looks like she's just floating in space. By getting rid of that, she seems to be at the top of her jump and about to head back down to Earth. Now, as for the sides, cropping also allows me to change the framing of the image. I can choose to put her in the middle of the frame, but in this case, I think it's much stronger if there's a bit more room on the right side so that there's space for her to move. You usually want to see where your subject is going, so leaving a little more space in front of her gives it that feeling of motion. Now that I'm pretty close to my final crop, I'm going to decide if I want to tighten it up just a little bit more. Most images can benefit from cropping a little tighter because it makes your subject bigger in the frame. It also allows you to get rid of any distractions, like the little bright areas where the sun was coming through between the leaves on the trees in the background. Those bright spots really pull your eye away from the subject, and that's not what I want to do. I want you to focus right on Jackie and her jump. Now, after all of that, I'm still going to play around a bit with the final crop. I'm going to move it up and down and left and right and really just see when it feels done. Of course, this is subjective, but I feel pretty strongly that the picture looks best like this. You really can do a lot to improve the feel of your photos simply by making smart cropping decisions. Now, this next shot is from a Luke Combs show at the stadium in Nashville. I went up to the top deck and zoomed in and made this shot, and this can benefit from both a straighten and a crop. Now, our stage had these extensions that came out into the crowd, and I didn't get them perfectly straight when I took this picture. So first thing I do is I'll fix that. Pretty easy to get those lined up right. But then I noticed that there's an area at the top left of the frame that doesn't have any people in it. This picture is stronger if it's just wall-to-wall fans, so I'm going to crop in from the left to get rid of that space. Then I'll just crop in a little tighter, like I said, and move the frame around until it feels right. In this case, it's sort of rule of thirds because Luke is a third of the way into the frame from left to right, and I realize that top to bottom, he's in the middle. He's not rule of thirds there, but it does feel unbalanced if I try to put him at the vertical third. I personally like symmetry, and this is the strongest composition for this image, in my opinion. So I think you get the idea of what I'm talking about here. Again, this is more art than science, but don't overlook something as simple as straightening and cropping your images. It's usually the little things that can have the biggest impact. What do you think? Am I overstating the importance of this? I challenge you to go back through some of your photos and see if you can make them stronger by straightening and/or cropping them. Let me know if it works down in the comments below. Remember to send in your photo questions to askdavidbergman.com. If you like these videos, I do appreciate you hitting that like button, and of course subscribing to the Adorama YouTube channel. Click that little bell icon so you're notified when new shows come out from myself and all the hosts on Adorama TV. Thanks so much for joining me, and I hope you'll come back next time right here on Ask David Bergman.